Please welcome the panelists. Good to see you all this afternoon. So we'll run this as we've done other sessions here. We'll have a few pre-planned discussion questions within the panelists, and then please do submit questions through the Whova app or website, and we'll do our best to get to as many audience questions as we're able. So Rodolphe, I want to start with yourself. The European Union has been developing and implementing the EU SST space safety system. Why has the EU felt it necessary to develop this capability, and what does that tell us about global trends in space activities and the need for space traffic coordination?
Thank you, Jan, for the question. Thank you for the invitation as well to the Secure World Foundation. And thank you for France for hosting us here. So here, the idea is when it was created in 2014, let's say it was a nice to have an SST system. Now is a must-have. I think we reach this conclusion. And we manage, thanks to the member states, because it's really a unique system, we are using member state assets and member state capabilities. And we started with 5 member states. And now we will be soon 19 member states. There is a process to expand the number of member states participating to the EU SST partnership. And this fast-growing system, just to show you, it started in 2014. In 2016, it was the first really precursor services. And today we are following more than 600 satellites from, of course, EU member states, but as well from 17 third countries. And what is even more interesting is to see that at the beginning we started mainly, as I said, with governmental assets, and we want to keep them. And here I would like to thank really member states for that. But there is now a real ecosystem. We have today, so we started with roughly 35 assets. Today we have 150 assets, radars, telescope, lasers, just to show that as well you have a real ecosystem developing. And finally, to conclude on that, the next step, the next evolution would be really a coordination, because today EU SST is for free, but is not compulsory. And the next step is proposed in the Draft Space Act, where we would like indeed to expand to a real coordination system.
And thank you for that. So just that history of the one program, I think, is a good microcosm or a good example of the overall trend towards this becoming a real operational need, and not just that, oh, we'd like it, right? So Mariel, Rodolphe spoke about a single regional system within the European context. You've done research on the growth of SSA and STC systems around the world, including the ones in the US and the ones in Europe. What can you tell us about, from that research, about how these systems compare, particularly in the services that they're offering to that ecosystem that Rodolphe is talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ian. So there has been a really interesting trend over the last 10 years or so of an increase in the number of independent national and regional SSA systems around the world. So we heard about the development of the program in Europe. The US is developing the traffic coordination system for space on the civil side for SSA, but also in Japan, in India, in Australia, China, Russia, you have systems that are either being developed or were already developed and are being advanced in this last 10 years or so, as well as a number of commercial SSA capabilities. So I think these are really interesting. Each of these different programs uses, at least to some extent, its own data sources, its own algorithms, has its own set of services that it provides, and its own set of customers. The only 2 systems right now that provide spaceflight services or intend to provide services to the full global set of spacecraft operators are the programs in the US and Europe. So a year or so ago, the TRAX team and the EU SST team put out a joint study comparing the services of those 2 systems, since those are the 2 that do provide those global services, and found that there really is quite good agreement in the services that each of those two systems provides, particularly when it comes to kind of that core capability of in-orbit collision avoidance. So that study is publicly available. You can find it online. That really goes through in detail and compares those. So I think, at least between those two systems, we have a good sense of how they compare, but it is a really interesting question as you get more of these systems around the world, what are the goals of each of them? How are they each operating?
Thank you for that, Mariel. I not to put somebody on the spot, but I believe Cristina Perez from AEE, the Spanish Space Agency, was involved in that study and is here in the audience today as well. So a chance to chat at the reception tonight, perhaps. Pakorn, I want to turn to you now. So Rodolphe and Mariel both talked about global systems and providing services, but just as a space agency from an emerging spacefaring country, what would you say are the SSA and STC needs and challenges that your agency faces, and can regional bodies like ASEAN help work on those?
Thanks very much. In fact, Thailand, GISA, we are very much concerned about the importance of the sustainability of the space environment. This is very important, and we have do research for quite some time, and now we are planning to implementing the system, the SSA and SCM system in Thailand, and that can be accessed to all satellite operators in Thailand and all related agencies that need this information. Of course, I think for the young country, like not the young, like young agency like Thailand, in Thailand, GISA, we lack of I think what they call high quality data to be used for our platform, and also we also still need the capacity building for both technical and policy matters. In fact, I think this problem also, I believe, is after we talk to our friends in ASEAN, these similar problems also happen to occur to others countries as well. We are thinking of sharing our resource, like for example, data, linking with data centers and research institute, and even like policy makers to share ideas and information, so that we can work together, we can collaborate and work together, and then we can contribute more to the global. So we are thinking of doing the ASEAN network for these areas as well.
Thank you for that. I quite like this idea that a regional body like ASEAN share capacity and be more efficient within the region, but also provide yet another network or another contribution at the global level. I think that's a very interesting model forward, and I think maybe we will turn to that later in discussion. So thank you. I want to now turn to Hamda. The UAE was instrumental in establishing the new SSA expert group at COPUOS that Artie mentioned earlier today, and the UAE will also serve as chair of that expert group. In listening to the remarks from the previous speakers, can you tell us more about why the UAE felt it was important to establish this group now, and why you took that kind of leadership position within COPUOS to do so?
Thank you so much, Ian. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. So, as we heard today, most of the challenges emerging that facing the sustainability is the congestion of the space environment. And one of the key recommendations that has been out of all of these discussions here and even in the other engagements is to have coordination among systems, coordination among every other aspect that supports or advanced the space sustainability aspect. So the UAE, just like as any other space nation, we do have assets in space, and we look into the safety and the sustainability of our space operations. So we see the space situational awareness is a vital instrument to make sure to protect the safety and sustainability of our space assets. In addition, we see this, we wanted to have active role and to contribute toward the international space sustainability efforts. With that, we developed the proposal of the establishment of the Space Situational Awareness Expert Group under the UN COPUOS. And the main objective is to facilitate the discussions in relation to the space situational awareness systems and technical aspect of it, because as Mariel just mentioned, there are multiple systems that has been developed either on the national levels or on the international levels, but there is no international or global platform that discusses this on the global level. So we see that the establishment of this expert group is one step to facilitate these discussions among global nations.
Thank you. All right, so Pakorn, I want to turn to you, but maybe take off just a hat a little bit and put on a different hat that you will be wearing come next year. So starting in February of 2026, you will serve as the chair of the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee at UN COPUOS, and the expert group, which Hamda just mentioned, will report through that subcommittee. It will do its work under that subcommittee. So how does the topic of space situational awareness align with other work being considered by the subcommittee, and how will this relate? Yeah.
Well, I think for this topics, very one of the important topics under STSC in UN COPUOS, and we have to do some work on for example, like the LTS guidelines, and now it's a very good timing that we have SSA expert group. In fact, I think I try to encourage the members to make use of the SSA data to link with the LTS guideline to work together, to can synergize the output from two bodies for that. Then you can make use of the resource for future collaboration. In fact, for example, we can link SSA data to the DB mitigation management model, and so we try to encourage to make the what they call interoperable standard, national to link data to each other. So in such a case, so once we can share data in the future, and in such a case, then we can contribute to in the global level.
Yeah, so I think the point about LTS is, I think, particularly worth coming back to, right? Because I think, as Director Halamani said earlier this morning, we've had challenges implementing LTS, and several of the long-term sustainability guidelines, several of those guidelines actually mention elements that we might consider to be part of space traffic coordination. So sharing of contact information, launch collision avoidance activities, right? So I think that the expert group does have a real opportunity perhaps to work on implementation of some of the existing consensus guidelines. Hamda, I think this is a question that I might then turn to you on as well. So as the expert group begins its work, chaired by your colleague, what are the immediate next steps? Not necessarily about the outcomes of it, but just how will the expert group begin to take its work? Yeah.
So currently the expert group is receiving the nominations for the experts that will be participating at the expert group. At the same time, the expert group has set a plan to have 2 meetings before the STSC meeting in February, where the first meeting will discuss the scope of the work and the way forward and the organization of the work in general, whereas the second meeting will focus on having some of the experts to present some of their SSA capabilities and presentations on the SSA in general. So with that, they can set the tone and to provide awareness to the member states and the participant on the existing SSA mechanisms, and to start the discussions from there.
Thank you. And I think maybe at this point I might mention we've been using the term expert group, and Artie spoke a little bit about this as well, but expert group is actually a significant term, because in COPUOS that there's a way through an expert group that states can nominate technical experts that might not ordinarily participate in the COPUOS forum. So there's opportunity for academic representatives, if nominated by the state, or even potentially industry representatives nominated by the member state. Is that understanding correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and so that's fairly significant in the COPUOS standpoint, because it does enable a participation of expertise that maybe is not normally represented in the member state delegations. And it was a structure that was used fairly successfully, I would say, in the long-term sustainability guidelines process. So, all right. So the next question is open to all four of you, and I would actually be very curious if interested, if all four of you might have a perspective on this. So the expert group, we now have consensus from member states at COPUOS that SSA and STC is a priority, and I think already really kind of emphasized that this morning. So now that we have this consensus, what are the low-hanging fruit, or kind of the first items that we might think where this expert group might be able to take some action to ensure space safety in the near term? Rodolphe went right for the microphone, so that's maybe an indication that you've got to reply.
So give the expert group the assignment, right?
Yeah. Yes.
We're going to give the expert group the assignment now, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's first a great opportunity, really, and this is a way to coordinate the coordinators of space traffic coordination. So this is the first element. The second element, I think, is the fact that, and this is very important, I mean, in the study that you mentioned, Mariel, it's very good because it shows you what we are doing. There are other systems, and we are ready, of course, to exchange, to discuss with them. And you have as well some countries who have no system today. And the idea is as well not only to coordinate the coordinators, but to offer the capabilities. So not to do it on their name, but to offer the capacity building to develop for every nation willing to develop a system, to develop a space traffic coordination system. Because if you have satellite, you need to have a system in order to follow that. And finally, I think it can become very quickly the safety net in case you have difficulty to contact the coordinators. Because today, indeed, you have difficulty to have contact points.
Yeah, I could add something. I mean, I think the creation of this group is a really exciting opportunity, and it is exciting to see, how much support there was for it when it was approved in June across a really wide range of different countries. And so I think there's a lot it can do. I mean, Hamda mentioned that, we don't have, or prior to this group, didn't really have a good forum to get these different SSA operators, these different countries together, sitting around the table to share information. And so I think, one, just having those countries talking to each other and sharing basic information about, what is their SSA program? What are they basically doing? Who are they serving with that program? I think sharing that kind of information will be really valuable. And I should mention there was a follow-on study also done by the Office of Space Commerce and EUSST looking at, when you try to work together between two systems, what are the types of information you might share with each other? Just basic programmatic information about how these systems work that's not sensitive, not too down in the details, but helps you really have a little more transparency, a little more kind of compatibility between these systems. So again, that one's also openly available. But sharing that type of information, I think, can be really valuable. And then I think, it's been mentioned a couple times, but I think there are some low-hanging fruit of challenges that we all recognize are there that this group might be able to kind of push over the edge to find solutions. So contact information is one that as mentioned twice already. It's already in the LTS guidelines. There's pretty much universal agreement that we need to have operational contact information, so when there's an event, you can get in touch with the other person, with the other operator. So, what's missing is some form of implementation that everyone can sort of agree to. So I think that type of thing is a great possibility for this group. And then there are other ones like talking about technical data standards. I know that was one I think that's mentioned even in the document, so just sharing that type of information with each other. And then I would also highlight, I think it's going to be really important to also incorporate the spacecraft operator voices in some way, because those, at the end of the day, those are the people who are actually using the data that comes out of these systems to make those decisions about actually avoiding collisions in orbit. And also the spacecraft operators have information about the locations of their own spacecraft that can be really vital to space situational awareness. So I think getting that community involved as well and thinking about those issues of information sharing principles, how do we all work together, I think are all really key things and possibilities for the group to consider.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I think first thing we we need to show. I think now we have the national or regional demonstration. If we can show this example to be under UN umbrella, then people can learn from the lesson learned on this, and also we can promote, the data sharing platform, data sharing framework. This is very important, and then we can do it now, because now there are many agencies willing to share the data, and if we promote this, it can be the second low-hanging fruit they can do. And the third, this is very important, that I think we can also do the standardize the data and also the terminology of the data, or that we're working together. This is very important. Yeah. Thank you.
I do agree with what my colleagues just said, and echoing on that, I think having the expert group establishment is a step forward to advance the space sustainability aspect, because for the first time, I think we do have a single venue under the UN, which will be discussing and aligning definitions and compare data formats and share what actually work operationally. So that alone build trust and consistency.
So I think that's the first time the word trust has come up in this conversation, and I think that is from my standpoint, that is one thing that this expert group I think can really help us work on, is that trust is, in my viewpoint, a fundamental aspect of coordinating the coordinators. Right, Rodolphe, is that trust in the data exchange, trust in the data itself, and trust in a process that allows that coordination, and that level of trust is what an international coordination or collaboration process really does do. So I think that's an important point in particular. But points of contact information, building that standardization, the capacity building elements, I think all of these are important things that we can really look to this expert group in the next 2 years to start making real progress on. Mariel and Rodolphe, I want to come to you on this question of information sharing and ensuring interoperability. So we've talked about some near-term low-hanging fruit. Looking towards a more medium-term or long-term, maybe beyond the immediate 2-year mandate of the expert group, what models or frameworks might we consider for enabling that SSA information sharing and enabling that interoperability on a more systematic level?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, the first place my mind goes, I guess, is to always look at what are the existing models that we can look at that work well. And I don't know, I would say this is probably another question that needs to have some discussion in the SSA expert group to think through all the possibilities. But I know people have pointed to examples like the ICG, so the International Committee on GNSS, as a place where, countries get together who are operating these systems on a kind of regular basis throughout the year and provide information about, what they're doing in their systems, where there are developments, really get to a level of technical coordination to make sure that you are understanding and developing in kind of a transparent and compatible way in this international space. So, I think models like that are really interesting to consider. And I think there'll be, more elements as well for, when you look at SSA, you'll also probably want to have some real-time or near real-time information sharing. And so there are other models to look at for that. A lot of my previous research was in remote sensing and weather. So I look at the WMO, for example, which does real-time information sharing globally. But I think, to me, that's what I always think of, is what are the other models out there in the world that we can look at? What's working well? How might we apply those to SSA? But I think that'll be an ongoing discussion to think through those possibilities.
Yeah, I really think indeed that the expert group has been created because there is a need, and to find an answer in order to reply to this need. So we will need indeed to find a way to formalize that, and I think your idea is indeed shared, at least at the Commission level. I cannot speak in the name of all the member states. We have different competences here, but of my member state I talk about. But this is indeed something that we need to keep in mind, because basically we need first to, in the future we will have more and more satellites, and it's very good. We need that. If we have more, satellite, it's because there is a need, and they provide services for our companies and citizens. And therefore, the need will be there more and more. So we need to find a way to discuss at the UN level. And this example that you gave with the GNSS system, I think is a very good one, because you have the expertise, you have the possibility as well, as you said, and it's very important to involve the operators, so the private side, because otherwise within the UN it might be more difficult. And then indeed, to conclude, it's true that there are two sides. The first side is more like what you call in the paper the programmatic side, meaning to learn about each other, to know whom to talk about standards, to talk about the methods, to talk about all these. I think there is a real consensus. When you start talking about exchanging really real-time data, they raise more other questions. For example, with EUSST, we are, as I said, we are using 150 sensors. Some of them are military sensors, others are commercial sensors. Therefore, if we buy the data, we need to have a special license if you give it to somebody else. So I think there are a lot of work to do only on the programmatic side to know about the different systems, to see what are the other systems that I don't know that well at all, and then to work together in order indeed to avoid one thing, is that we lose access to space, basically.
Thank you. So going to come now, Pakorn and Hamda, a question for both of you. From your regional perspectives, we're talking here about global challenges and global coordination, but from your regional perspectives, how can we ensure, or what steps can we take to ensure global participation and buy-in from all regions, and so that we're truly developing a global approach to this? So from emerging regions, from new actor regions, how do we ensure the design works, basically?
Yeah, I think the subject of this space traffic coordination says, or no one can work alone on this topic, and to work together. The important is we have to understand the different level of capabilities of each countries or each regions. They may have the different capabilities, different capacities, and then sharing those capabilities will be really required on global collaboration. And also, it's really important if you can have a pathway to link between the technical people and also policy makers. This is really important, because if you talk among your technical people, but it never convey the message to the policy makers, it's never tangible.
From our perspective, I would say to have or to ensure the buy-in, it grows when the frameworks are built with the ecosystem and not for the ecosystem. With that, when we developed the proposal, we made sure to have, as part of the expert group, the voices of the operators and within their nations to be part of the discussions that are shaping the future of the expert group, because when they feel like their voice is heard and they're part of the recommendation building, it make them buy in and make sure that they will follow.
Yeah, so a couple of things to pick up, I think. And so, Hamda, you said we have to build with the users or build with the operators, not build for that community. And I think it's a fairly nuanced point, but I think it's a really significant one. The design of the expert group ideally does allow that to happen. And Pakorn, a couple of times you talked about technical to policy and making sure that those two communities talk to each other. And that goes, I think, in both directions, right? Because bringing the technical expertise into the policy-making stream is important, but we also need to communicate the needs of the policy-making ecosystem back into the technical community. So I think, as I sit here in my role as an NGO and an observer at COPUOS, that is potentially part of what we can do through forums like this and others, is as the expert group does the work, as the broader community does its work, talking about that and sharing those outcomes and then bringing perspectives back in. All right, so we have about 13 minutes left. We do have a number of questions submitted from the audience, so I do thank the audience for that. We're reaching the end of the afternoon, so I'm glad to see people still have the engagement and interest to submit questions. So I think, Mariel, this first one is probably for a combination of you and Rodolphe. Earlier sessions today at the summit have talked a little bit about public good space safety information versus commercial services and value-added services. So I'm just curious about your perspectives on where the line is in what is the public basic space safety obligation, and what, in terms of national STC systems and the global coordination we're thinking about, is the where value-added services and commercialization takes place.
So, thank you very much for the question. This is a question which is asked several times to us. And I understand. And it's why I insisted that we are using more and more commercial sensors, for example. But if you take an analogy, which you have to take with some, let's say, brackets, because you cannot compare STC, space traffic coordination, and air traffic management. We all know the differences, okay? But will you give air traffic management to competing companies for the same country? Will you take a plane in that case? If you had 10 companies competing for the air traffic management and without talking to each other, or talking barely, because of course, if you have companies, you have clients, and if I say to my client, well, don't worry, you don't need to move, the other will move. You see, this is the point. But does it mean that there is no place for added value services? Not at all. And this is basically what you have, according to us, in the Draft Space Act. Because in the Draft Space Act, we are saying the operators, they need to give their precise ephemeridus. For that, you need to have either internally the capacity to do it, or you can give it to a private company, for example. If you have EUSST, because I take the example that I know, saying, well, you need to move, this is a collision avoidance maneuver that we offer you, but at the end of the day, it's always up to the company to decide. And if they want to have some very detailed analysis of what they could do, not to move now, but in 10 hours, because they need to provide to their customers specific services, then they could go to private companies in order to develop very precise collision avoidance maneuvers. But at the end of the day, you need a coordinator. You need somebody to know exactly that somebody is going to move and where to go. Otherwise, this is a perfect recipe for failure. But to say that it has to be only, and to take the example of ATM in some countries is run by private companies, of course. So it's not, but you need one coordinator at one stage. Otherwise, it's too dangerous.
Yeah, so I can add on a little bit. So I really agree with those comments as well. And I think, you know, this debate about what's the role of the government in this area, what's the role of commercial, is one that has gone on for a very long time, and I am sure will continue into the future. But I think sort of a couple answers to this. I mean, one, I think that document I mentioned earlier that compares the services for tracks and EUSST, I mean, that's a nice place where you can see these are the very specific services that the public systems are providing, right? And so that's a very concrete answer to, you know, what's the role of the government versus commercial. Government is doing those things. I think Rodolphe brings up a good point of, you know, the government is also a customer of commercial. I know that's true in Europe. That's also certainly the goal in the United States, for that, even if it's the the government system, that it's very much leveraging what's available in the commercial sector for our user interface, for the algorithms, for data and information. So trying to have that relationship as well as supporting a value-added sector. So I think there's multiple kind of ways that government and commercial can interact. And then the last piece I would say, also using analogies, because I think that's the most effective way, and looking at weather, as I often do due to my background, these services will and should continue to evolve over time as our capabilities increase, as our knowledge of SSA and our abilities increase. But I think the real focus for the public service is on safety. You want to avoid collisions between satellites, and you want to do that really well. And so the analogy to me is, to tornado warnings or hurricane warnings on the weather side, right? You want to do that really well. So you don't provide, an okay hurricane warning, and then you can go pay if you want to know really where the hurricane's coming. Like, no, we want to give you a really good, hurricane warning, right, or tornado warning. And I think in SSA, but if you want a weather forecast for your offshore oil rig, or if you want weather information that's going to help your agricultural system, then work with the commercial sector and get that value-added product, right? I think it's similar for SSA. So in my opinion, as we move this forward, we do want to continue to improve and do well on that basic safety service. We really do want to ensure we don't have accidental collisions. But there is a lot of other stuff, I think, where you can add value to the community to do, more efficient management of a constellation, or you can provide services to operators who maybe don't want to have a big flight dynamics team and they want to hand that off to someone else who has expertise there. So I think there are different possibilities, and that's where I think the interesting explorations are going to be. Yeah.
All right, so Rodolphe, this is very clearly for you, and I think you've already mentioned it, but I want to just kind of come back to it. It's a quick answer. Will EU SST offer basic services for any space operator like the US does, or is it only for European entities?
No. Today, the collision avoidance service is open to everybody. This is open to any operator willing to. There is a process. You can go online on the EU SST website and you can register. Okay,
so this one is for anyone who wishes to take it on. If operators are using different space safety or SSA systems with their own data, their own algorithm, their own risk tolerances, and potentially executing uncoordinated avoidance maneuvers, do we have any mechanisms in place to ensure that those operators have a common picture? That might be the answer.
I would say, since nobody answered, the answer is to have an expert group to discuss and to coordinate those mechanisms.
Yeah, if I may, it's why I turn to you, I think. You are the answer.
All right. So with that, we've got about 5 minutes left, but I actually want to leave enough time for everyone to give a complete answer to this question. So I'm gonna kind of end to the last question here, but it also is one that we have a similar question in the Q&A. So if we look around the room that is here today with us in the audience and those listening online, I think it's fair to say that the majority of the people here don't attend COPUOS, are not members of member state delegations, are probably not likely to be nominated as experts for the expert group itself, right? So as the work of COPUOS and the expert group proceeds over the next 2 years, what advice or steps would you give to this audience on how to engage with that process, with the expert group or COPUOS broadly, and what steps should our stakeholders here in the audience at the summit be taking to ensure space safety while that diplomatic process moves forward over the next 2 years? So that's for everyone on the panel to share your viewpoints on.
So I would say to make sure that to channel your voices is to make sure to feed your views through the right channels, to brief your national delegations, and or to work through recognized observer organizations. Because when we developed the proposal, we made sure to include the voices of the experts, either through their participation if nominated by their national delegation, or through written contributions also submitted by their national delegations. So with that, they can be part of the discussions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I would add, I mean, partly here coming as a representative of an academic organization, right, I would emphasize that a lot of the solutions and the ideas that groups like this can use are ones that people have been thinking about and working on for a long time, right? Someone smart who is actually in the audience here mentioned me one time that COPUOS in general is not about doing new research, coming up with new solutions that no one's ever thought of. It's taking great ideas and trying to get agreement on them and put them into practice. So, you know, I think there is a lot of room for this community to be working on those solutions and those possibilities, sharing it in forums like this, sharing it with, you know, your government representatives that are going to these kind of groups, sharing it with the chairs of the group, right? To make sure that those ideas that are already out there and that people have been working on for many times for years actually get funneled in and can now actually be put into practice.
I think this application of the SCSC and also the expert group to promote, you know, to inform your country, your countries that, you know, from your members to inform your country who are your country representation in this field, so that they can access and communicate to those people and exchange information or so whatever. And also, we don't have to wait for the diplomatic process. We can do anything we can do, like, you know, adoption the best practice guidelines, or we can start sharing data with your network, your own network. And, you know, several things you can do. The most important is if you can get some feedback, you know, from lesson learned to back to COPUOS, back to SCSC or expert group, so that the policy level will realize and try to solve the problem. Thank you.
I think a lot of things have been said, but I think indeed this type of panel is meant for that, to say, I mean, it's time for you, if you work in the field, being, I mean, academic, being from the governmental agency, and you feel involved in this topic, it's time to participate to a great adventure. Because when you start really the work that you will lead, it's really on this topic, something new, which is going to be developed, and we already discussed about the potential future of this expert group. So the idea is it's a great moment, and we need to make a great momentum of that. And for that, we need the help of everybody. So please channel all your ideas that you have to all the people that you can, so we can use them, because we need them.
All right, well, thank you all. I think I will re-emphasize the point that I think several of you made, that if the community here wants to contribute to the expert group, that doesn't necessarily need to be through a formal process, right? It's talking to it's talking to your agencies, it's talking to your regulators. It's, you know, Pakorn just organized a lovely forum, the Thai Space Expo last week, right? And there's a session on space traffic coordination as part of that, right? So that was directly tied to the expert group, but there were states in that room that probably will be part of the expert group, right? So this is a process that filters in and through in multiple ways. So with that, the clock has turned red and is counting in the other direction. So that's always a sign that our time has come to an end. So thank you to our four speakers, and thank you to the audience.